I just started with the thought of I wanted to look at the significance of elementary school recess, and I thought, we all have a pretty good idea of what recess is. It's just a break kids have where they are supervised, but their time is unstructured. They spend it how they want to, and typically engage in physical activity, and that is different from physical education, in which there are learning objectives and assessments. Here, none of that. They just get to play, run around, do whatever they want, and I think because of that, it's easy for a lot of elementary schools to dismiss it, and a lot of them are in recent times. Since no learning is occurring, they think they can cut that out and then spend more time in the school. And I wanted to see what that impact was and how important recess is to an elementary school student. So what I'm going to show you is this is the thesis statement that I came up with after all the research, and then after that I'm going to show you 5 of the articles I used for this. And my final statement after reading through everything was that current and future elementary school curricula need to place greater priority in providing students with unstructured playtime or recess. And this is how I came about it. The first thing I looked at, this is just a simple observational study on what elementary school students are doing during recess. The people who did this study didn't try to intervene in any way. They didn't alter the setting. They just watched and recorded what they saw. And a lot of them were expecting a lot of sitting around or a lot of just the opposite of what you see in a physical education classroom, but they kind of saw the opposite. And even in elementary school settings where you don't play sport-based activities all the time in physical education, they started these on their own when they were given unstructured recess. And they used a lot of sport-based activity, and they used them in large group settings. And you don't do that in a phys ed classroom, but that's not what this is about. And they saw a lot of these sports simulations that gave them a good amount of physical activity and a lot of cooperation roles, teamwork, working together. They saw a lot of good things. And the bottom there is just the concluding statement that I drew straight from the conclusion of the study, and says this study has confirmed recess as a valuable opportunity for elementary school children to increase their levels of physical activity. So I took this study, and I knew that research has said they can get physical activity from recess, but I wanted to see what the cognitive effects of that were going forward, because I know you can get physical activity from physical education classes, but how did unstructured play really help them? And so that brought me to this study, which was the effect of different periods of recess time on classroom behaviors. And what they did is they took 3 groups with 3 different time periods of recess. I think it was 1 30-minute recess period, an hour-long recess, and an hour-and-a-half-long recess in an elementary school setting. And they observed their attentive behaviors before and after the recess, and wanted to see if the recess had anything to do with that. And interestingly enough, they found that the time slot you gave them for recess did not impact anything. But in all 3 of them, their attentive behaviors went way up after recess. And it didn't matter if it took 30 minutes or an hour and a half. And I think that is significant because it says that you don't have to take a large chunk of your time out of the day for recess for it to be an effective means for giving kids a refresher and bringing them back into the classroom. So I took that, and I wanted to see how the rest of the world thinks about this. And this wasn't a study, this is just an article on the role of recess in children's cognitive performance. And it talked about the idea of mass versus distributed practice. And this doesn't always apply to just the school setting. It's really when any kind of learning is taking place. And in any situation, if you practice something for a long time and then take a test on it versus you practice something in short periods of time while taking breaks in between, you always do better if you take short breaks in between your learning. That's what keeps you engaged and what allows you to do better on tests afterwards. And so they talked about this a little bit, and then I thought this table was really interesting. They looked at a typical U.S. elementary school in Minneapolis, And they compared it to two schools, one in Taiwan, one in Japan. Both of those areas are known for having really academically successful school programs. And so you can tell the U.S. school is in class less than the other two, both in terms of days per year and in each day the number of hours they're in school. But I think that's possible because if you look at the number of recesses they have per day. I mean, in Japan, they're in school, 70 more days than us and longer per day, but they get 5 recesses every day. So the rest of the world has kind of already grabbed onto this idea, and it makes me wonder why the U.S. hasn't. I mean, elementary school students think school is boring, they think the day's too long. Well, I can't imagine what they would do if they went to schools like this. And I think the reason those schools on the other side of the world make it possible is because of they know that taking these breaks helps them, and giving them more recess only keeps them more attentive in the classroom. So then I wanted to look at the environment around recess and how you can provide kids with an opportunity for this unstructured play. And this was another study done in, I think, Western Australia. And they looked at the RMVPA levels, which is recess, moderate to vigorous physical activity, in 27 schools in Western Australia. And then they also recorded the environment that this recess was taking place in. And they concluded that children's higher daily RMVPA was associated with newer schools, schools with a higher number of grass surfaces per child, and fewer shaded grass surfaces. So, I mean, kind of obvious, if you have to provide kids with an outdoor space, turns out you need a sunny space too, for this recess to take place. And I know a lot of schools in the U.S. that are built now don't come with this kind of stuff because they'd rather use the space for a classroom or some sort of inside facility, and I think that's really limiting their capabilities. So then the final study I looked at is, so I know you need a space for a recess to take place, but do you really need equipment? Just another expense for schools to take on for recess. And this is another study that looked at RMVPA levels, but this time they used an experiment which they used 4 groups. One group they gave playground equipment to. One group they gave the recess setting that they used had markings on the ground to kind of denote boundaries or like a basketball court or something like that. And then they gave one group both of those, equipment and playground markings, and they used a control group which they didn't give them any of that, just open space. And surprisingly enough, there was no difference in their RMVPA levels. And so the kids that were given an open field were just as active as those that were given lots of playground equipment and a structured space to do that in. So, and I think that says a lot about recess because we've seen that it can be valuable because it does lead to physical activity, and it does, that physical activity does give them increased cognitive performance in the classroom. But it's not very expensive for schools because you don't need a lot of equipment, you just need an open space, and it also, through the other studies I looked at, it doesn't take up a lot of time through the school. So I think recess is always going to be a valuable investment for an elementary